Hi, welcome to our March 19th, 2021 Club Cubase live stream. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. I'm going to do a quick audio test, make sure everything is going through as expected. Hi, welcome to our March. Okay, everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host of the Hangout today. If you have not attended a Club Cubase live stream before, how it works is you could submit questions in advance to clubcubase at steinberg.de, or you can just ask them in the live chat field. We will try to go through as many questions as we can, and we'll try to keep it chronological so that, all right, so just reading through a couple questions that are already coming in. So if you ask a question, and probably the ability to ask questions will be faster than my ability to answer them, but we'll try to get through them in order. Periodically, I may have my screen, my chat field may reset. So I may have to, once in a while, I will lose a couple questions. I'll apologize in advance for that. Like many during the pandemic, my family's at home, so you may hear my wife, who's working directly above me, and my son is doing homeschool, virtual school today. So I may have an interruption or two, so I'll apologize in advance for that. But we will let people get logged in. I'm presenting, once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America as a product specialist for Steinberg products. I'm based in the United States, and I live just outside Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. So that's where I'm presenting from. So if this is your first time on a Hangout, please let us know and introduce yourself. If you're watching this session live, you may want to, it's always wonderful to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, who you are and where you're from. And if this is your first Hangout, make sure that you get a chance to indicate that to us as well. As you ask questions, we'll try to, if you could include which version of Cubase, which computer operating system you're running. So you could say I'm running Cubase 11 Pro on Mac OS or Cubase Artist 10 on Windows 10. That information is often helpful as well. So we have some people that often hang out, help during the session. So we'll have Agent K usually does some moderation. We have Jazz Dude's always wonderful for helping people in a more real-time manner until I get caught up. And we also, if you want to see a fabulous resource of different Cubase information, you could go to the Cubase Nation Discord. And there's a wealth of information there. If you want to search for particular topics that are covered during Hangouts, you could go to Jan, who's from Stockholm. He created a website called cubaseindex.com. And from there, you could actually search for a particular topic. And if it's been covered in a Hangout, it'll take you to a link. I think it's derived from the Hangout indexes that are done as well. We will have all the topics indexed with timestamps later tonight. But let's go ahead and see who is on the Hangout. We'll get started in a couple minutes. If you're watching this, after the live stream, you could just you may want to skip ahead a couple minutes, but we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. So you see Ace Amadeus from Texas. We have Sir Robert from Atlanta. We also have okay. All right, so we have Ken from Norway. All right, so we have Theodore from London. All right, we have Robbie Bowling from Dallas. All right, so we have John Wells from Japan, where it's 2 a.m. Okay. All right, so we have Uno from Finland. We have Walter Blackledge from St. Louis. We'll let some more people get logged in here. So if you guys want to start asking questions. All right, so we have Randy from Texas. We have John from New Jersey again. All right, we have Thomas Young from Eden, North Carolina. All right, we have Pablo Vasquez from Galicia, España. I did a bass line for the Beyond the Sunset last night, so it was a great drum part again, Pablo. Hope you liked the bass line. All right. All right, so let a couple more people get logged in. All right, so we have Eddie from Belgium. All right, so we have Stefan from Sweden. We have Benny from London. Leeser T. And we have, so Leeser from France. We have Michael Pierce. We know we're in the middle of kind of daylight saving on from Vienna, Austria. Always wanted to go there. All right, we have Steven from Buffalo. Aaron from Canada. Or an hour late from Europe, sorry, and other comb. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So when you go to a chord pad, let me just, I think I might even have a project here that I could show this with. I'll just go to the chord pads here and say, okay. So here I could just have like a guitar part, so when I play, and how you could get this kind of set up is just by going to kind of this chord. I could trigger different kind of arpeggiated patterns. So any pattern you could import different MIDI loops or drag and drop any parts. And let's see if we come over here. I haven't tried this before, but if I go to just like a plain pattern, so say I just do plain chords, you may be able to even go to different arpeggiators here as like a MIDI insert. So let's say if I go to MIDI insert, I just wanted to. So now I could just have a particular MIDI insert and say I want this to be my step size. We'll do maybe. So, you know, it's going to just kind of play one particular chord. I could just come here and. I could just arpeggiate within a chord using the real-time MIDI plugin just by hitting one note. And if I turn that off, we'll just have plain chords, but I could arpeggiate. So that's a couple of different approaches for that. All right, so question from Ace. Hi, Greg. In the MIDI editor, could you please show me how to do 16th note fills in a range? And do we have a humanize function? I'm trying to create hi-hats. So if I was doing a quick hi-hat part, I would probably do it in a drum editor. I'll show you a couple of ways we could do this. I'll just add a drum instrument. So let's say I'll just go to Groove Agent here. And if I wanted to program, like if I wanted to just do some quick, let's say I'll just do like a horrible drum beat here. I'll just come over here. So I'm going to first just come over here to the track, and I'm going to have Cubase automatically generate a drum map for us. Now when we double click, we can see all the names for the instruments here. So let's say if I just wanted to put this on, put my click track on, and I'll just make this a little as straight eighth. But if I wanted to put it, I think the default value would be 16th note. So now I could just drag it across. All right, so at this point I could just come over here if I wanted to kind of randomize some different aspects. You know, one of the things you could do is just say, okay, if I wanted to be a little more realistic sounding, often just kind of varying the hi-hats. I could click on the hi-hats and I don't see the kick and snare velocities. If I click on the kick note, I could just, so say if I wanted to reset my quantize, we could just kind of come over here. Let's find just a little more. So let's say we'll do this to 16th notes, and now I'll apply the quantize. So that way we could just apply some, you know, different random stuff just with drums, but, you know, just kind of doing, you know, can just make kind of programming drums super fast. Drag this to, I'll just do this on maybe a Rhodes. So let's say I wanted a pattern, and at this point I could just drop the MIDI part, and we go to our Rhodes. As I play the different chord patterns, sorry about that, it'll now. So I will take this particular track, and let's make sure that we're in pattern mode here. So say pattern, and so at that point, just drag and drop that. And so I'll just hit, let's say, an E chord. So we can take that same basic pattern and just have it trigger through all the different. And you could just play this from MIDI notes as well. So that's how you could do that. Excuse me, I just have a quick call coming in. Okay, so question. Any idea why sounding Cubase 11 Pro crashes after using Groove Agent after some 10 minutes? So I would, you know, the first thing I would try to do is one, you know, it could be if something is crashing. So generally, you know, that isn't typical behavior. But if stuff is crashing, I would come over here and, you know, try raising the buffer size. The first thing from your audio interface, if you go to studio setup, and then just go to your control panel here, and you could try adjusting the buffer size. Now, depending upon your audio interface and depending on your system as well, sometimes if you're loading in large kits into Groove Agent, you know, it can take memory. But if you go to the options page, I would try to adjust like the max preload, and that could give you more memory. So if your system is running shy on memory, you know, maybe you could try, you know, sometimes I've seen people with really large kits that could go beyond, you know, 1.2 gigs and just kind of allocating more of the preload. You know, buffer size here can give you a little more headroom. Those are some of the things that I would try. So, but you may get a, kind of a crash message like when Cubase reboots, but, generally, I've run, Groove Agent for hours without any problems, but I would try those things and they may kind of lead you down to the right path. All right. All right. Just seeing, having some emails come in. All right. All right, let's read through some of the comments. Sir Robert wants people to smash the like button. So, okay, just going through comments. My chat field just jumped on me. Sorry about that. Let me just scroll back. All right, so we have Omar from France is checking in also. All right, and we have India present and Italy. Okay, so I see just comments that the stream is buffering for people. So it looks like everything is kind of okay on my end, but I'll just kind of keep monitoring it. I usually get kind of a message if there's any buffering issues. So sorry about that, but everything looks fine on my broadcasting software. I'll just do a quick test of my OBS. Okay, so let's say it's right click, search for path. Let's say if I wanted to go to my actual Dublin, I think, in my house, everyone else is on Wi-Fi and I'm on a wired connection. So sorry if there's a lot of buffering going on today. Maybe it'll settle in. All right, so we have Gloria Williams checking in from Nigeria. And we have Thailand checking in. All right, so I just see from Jay from Connecticut saying, Greg, would you be so kind as to ask the Steinberg team to add live video options in the new Wavelab cast? Audio podcast is okay, but a bit dated. Friends and I are seeking OBS replacement. So I'll mention it to them, but I think we kind of specialize more in audio capability. So that's kind of where our area of expertise is. So. All right, so we have Andres from Old Bridge, New Jersey, checking in. Okay, so we have a question from Litchfield, UK. I've just inputted a WAV file, sample editor to set up a loop and set the tempo, time signature, accurate. How do I then replace the track in the project window? All right, so let's go ahead and just drop a audio file in. Okay, so now let's say we go to the Okay, so just input a WAV file into the sample editor. So we see our sample editor here. Let's go to definition. Okay, and got the tempo and time signature accurate. How do I then replace the track in the project window? So, generally in the sample editor, you could, I'm not sure if you're editing, directly from maybe like the pool window. I mean, you can come over here to, let's say, the pool window. And you could edit directly from, I think, the pool window here, and see the sampler. But if you start from the project window, and then once you have your time signature and everything set there, all you'd have to do is to place that particular track into musical mode. So let's say if we're here, we could just say, let's just put this into musical mode, and then that will automatically fall. But if I'm not sure if you're editing from maybe the pool, but if it's in the project window when you start the process to launch the sample editor to find the tempo and time signature, all those settings will just be carried over from the sample editor directly into the project. So, but if I'm misunderstanding, just let me know. All right, great to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Okay, reading through comments. Halion Sonic are in Halion 6. So with the live stream, so apologize for that. All right, so just seeing kind of a message, please restart your connection. You keep cutting out. So I could maybe try to restart my computer. So I'll go. I seem to be having a lot of buffering today, so let me do that. If you guys want to hang on just for a minute, and we'll see if we can get the buffering kind of sorted out. So I'm going to go ahead and restart my machine, and so just bear with me for a couple minutes. See if we get this working better. All right, we'll see how if this has improved the streaming capability. Just getting my Cubase restarted and do a quick test and just make sure. Okay, we get our project open. Sorry about that. Okay, so we'll see if the streaming has gotten better. All right, so let's go ahead and see if the buffering is improved. Sorry about that. Didn't have anything change, or no one's watching Netflix or anything in my house. So. Okay, just reading through comments. All right, so we see Sable Winters on a Hangout. So hopefully some of the buffering will have improved with the reboot on my computer. All right, good to see Tan Mei on the Hangout. Okay, my chat field just... All right, great to see Gareth on the Hangout. If you're, I'm not sure how, if you're transmitting see if that makes a difference. But if you could let us know how you're getting the audio information as well. So it seems like it's still kind of doing a lot of buffering today. So even after the reboot. And if you're, as Jazz Dude has mentioned, if you're doing a lot of, any antivirus stuff in the background, it's always bad to do. Right. Good to see Captain Energy Music on a Hangout. Seeing people tell me to get a PC, so. All right, good to see JVI in a Hangout. Sorry if it's buffering a lot today for some reason. All right. Okay, so we see Filter Freak isn't getting buffering. So I'm getting some buffering on my own end here. So I'm going to try to keep plowing through. I know we're having different buffering issues, but I'll try to kind of keep plowing through. But if it's too annoying, I could stop the Hangout and we could do it on next week if that makes sense. So if you guys want to leave comments, but we'll just try to keep working through it. Right. All right, just okay, so we have a question. Hi, any idea why sometimes the sustain of low notes keep ringing if you load the project after saving? Happens with plugins like the Grand or Vibrant. So I haven't come across that. It could be maybe a chase events message. I've seen sometimes where in kind of older MIDI days where You could, not have a note off message, or a note off message may not be set. So, but let's say if we go to MIDI, maybe you could just choose, to do like a reset on stop, or just kind of come right over here and see that these are set to the default. But it could be maybe a chase events message. So I would check that and see. And if there's any, see if it's a note that's actually in the sequence or not, or, maybe it's a sustain pedal that's not released. So it could be something like that. Okay, so we have a question. What is the easiest way to store an audio clip, MIDI clip to Media Bay, user content, audio files, MIDI loops, drag and drop does not seem to be supported. So it's really when you're doing kind of Media Bay, anything that's, you instead of like importing something into Media Bay, all you have to do is really just tell what folder that you want Media Bay to look in. So instead of, telling, instead of, importing it into Media Bay will just scan your particular folders. So if you say, okay, I want it to come here, and just look for, particular audio files, you could just kind of click and see all of the different, files that would be, going on in that particular folder. So you don't have to necessarily import anything into Media Bay, but just tell Media Bay what folders to look into. And then Media Bay will be able to find all of those particular folders for you. So all those different MIDI files, audio files, everything. So just put it into a user folder, have Media Bay scan the user folder and the ability for it to look in there, and it will all be available inside your Media Bay. So. All right, so see Gareth thanking me for a bass line I did late last night. So it was a fun project. Like the song. All right, so you see Soren got his tools for his ER22 Mark II from last time. So that's great. Okay. Hi, Greg. Matthias from Hamburg. Hello, everybody. I do not understand how to sidechain a reverb or delay under Cubase 11, especially do I need to copy a track for that? Can you explain that, please? All right. So let's come to, I'll just go to a project here. And we'll just do a quick sidechain on like a delay for vocals. I haven't done this in a while, but we'll take a look. Okay, so I'm just going to duplicate my vocal track here. And I'm going to send this to no bus. And it's going to... Let me just close out some other programs I'm not using that were closed before. This came up on reboot. Okay. All right, so I want to put a delay on this vocal track. All right, so I'm going to set up a sidechain from the source. All right, let me see if maybe I had to do it on this one. Okay, so I'm going to route this to my stereo bus, and then we'll feed this out to just a side chain. All right, so this way, you know, as soon as the one track, and let's see if I, that you could just kind of, you know, have the one track feed to sidechain, and when it's not playing, then that will, you know, the sidechain kicks in. So let's come here and we'll just activate the sidechain input. So that way you could activate the sidechain, and the one channel that's going will just simply, you know, when there's space, that's when that delay kicks in. Now, if you wanted to do it for, like, you know, having, you know, something sidechain like a reverb, that what you could do is just go to like the reverb send. So let's say if I just jump here to my send, so I'll go to my reverence in my effects channels. So now if I wanted to come here, what you could do is put the reverence as the second effect and just run like a compressor just as just before it hits the effects end, and then you could sidechain in the compressor before the reverb, and that way you could have the reverb basically just, you know, being ducked according to the compressor. So all right. Okay, reading through comments and questions here. All right, so you see, hi Greg, this is Oren. Good to see you on a Hangout, Oren. Did you ever get around to making that video and showing people how to use the flex razor? So I have about half of it done, so I haven't gotten the dedicated tutorial, but there's going to be a whole kind of slew of new tutorials coming out, probably starting in April. So you see, it's apparently Filter Freak is the only guy that's not having streaming problems today. Okay. And see Gareth is maybe working a little better. So. Okay, reading through more comments. Okay, so we're seeing that people are having, I see Robbie having problems with the Windows update in his UAD interface. All right, so just kind of. Okay, so we have a question from Sam TV. Question: Are the rumors true that there will be no more dongles coming soon later this year? So Steinberg did officially announce that they will be moving to a new licensing system that will not require a dongle, and it's about, it's kind of, they're still in final investigations for new systems, but they have made the announcement. So and we don't know a lot of details on it, but you could, I think that there will be kind of announcements coming as more details are available. All right, so we have a question. Does anyone know how to convert files to Cubase that were recorded in the very old Yamaha XG Works? So probably the best way to, if it's like a sequence data, if there's a way to convert that to a standard MIDI file, but I could maybe talk to some of my colleagues at Yamaha as well. Okay, so question from Benny B. Hello, Greg. I face a bug in Cubase 11 Pro. Each time I add a track, I find myself somewhere outside Cubase. Cubase does not crash, but I have to select my Cubase window again. Any workaround? So I'm not sure if you have a project that's been defined, but if I go to add audio track, my Cubase window, stays present and in the foreground. So I'm not sure if you're running Mac or PC, but if you could let us know, that would be helpful. But maybe it's if you are adding an audio track and maybe something else is, says, there's a WAV file, open me instead. But I haven't seen that happen. But let us know if you're running on Mac or PC. All right, my chat field just kind of jumped on me again, so. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, so we see from JVI question: I'm using a groove agent pattern. I have a pad which plays 8 bars, but I wanted to start on beat 1. When I hit the pad, it currently seems to count some multiple of 8 from bar 1 project. So it's good to take a look. And once again, if you guys could leave comments, I may not be able to check in real time for a little bit, but if the streaming quality is improved since I reboot it, just let me know in the comments. I'll get there soon. Okay, so I will come over here to just a groove agent pattern. All right, so let's say I have like this particular pattern going on. So say but it says you want to start it on beat 1. So let me just all right, so I want to start on beat 1, but when I hit the pad, currently it seems to count some multiple of 8. So let's see if there's anything that would adjust kind of the pattern playback. All right, so let's say if I just come here and we play back. So as soon as I hit this again, it just goes directly to the beginning of the pattern. So that seems to kind of, so it says pad, which plays 8 bars, and this one is playing 2 bars. But it seems like it's always playing the particular pattern. Just kind of adds, and I'll just see if there's any options, maybe in the playback mode. So this is the only options in the pattern playback, but it's just, so I'm not sure if it's, let me just see if there's anything up here. So, I mean, it all seems to be kind of working as expected. So it says, but when you always want to start on beat 1 when I hit the pad. So let me know, Jay, if it's a particular pattern or a particular kit that that it's doing it on. I'll try another drum kit here, just to see if it behaves the same way, like an acoustic agent kit, and we'll see. So say if I go to my MIDI playback here, you know, we can just kind of so as I just click with the mouse, it's always starting on beat 1 for me. So let me know if it's a particular pattern or if it's a acoustic agent or groove agent. That would be helpful info. So I just see what is this application name? So we're showing Cubase Pro 11 and all the Steinberg products. Okay, we have a question. I don't have an e-licenser chip. How can I activate my DAW? So if you have Cubase Artist or Cubase Pro, you're going to need to get a USB e-licenser. If you have Cubase Elements, AI, or LE, you could just use the soft e-licenser. So once you have the DAC code, you can go to your My Steinberg account. That will give you an e-licenser code that you could enter in the e-licenser program. So. Okay, so just a question. What's the best way to program drums? Do you guys use the drum editor much, or do you put waves in the playlist? So I think, using the drum editor is pretty great way of doing it. Another method of doing this is also to use one of the MIDI inserts that's really kind of designed for particular drum programming called Beat Designer. So if I wanted to just open up the Beat Designer here, we could just have it will come with a number of different patterns, but you could also just kind of come and I will just make a quick drum map from this. Okay, so we have our drum map. So let's say as I just play, and I'll just solo this. So if I just want to make a quick beat, I could adjust the velocity. And if you want to put flams, you just kind of click on the node here. And if you wanted to choose different sounds, you can say, okay, I just want to put a little bongo. So you could do this in a drum editor or just very easily. And then once you have that beat, you could also just say, okay, I wanted to insert the pattern at the left locator, and that will just put that pattern right in, and you can make copies. So that's another way that you could do it directly inside of the Beat Designer plugin or within the drum editors. Some people will just drag it all out to the project window. However you get your drums done, that works for you. So. All right, so just see a question, how much does the dongle cost? So I think it's like $30, $35, and that could hold multiple licenses. So you get it from your local music dealer or, from the Steinberg online shop. All right, great to see Millard Brown on a Hangout. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, so we have a question from Soren. Can I parallel process compress without making a duplicate track? I know very little about it. Can you show a bit about it? All right, so let's say if I wanted to do parallel compression on, let's say, a drum kit. You often will see it on maybe some bass or drums, vocals is another thing. So some people will just kind of duplicate the tracks, and you know that will get you kind of to the same area. But I'm going to take a number of tracks here, and I'm going to add with this. I'm going to add 2 group tracks. And so the concept of parallel processing is that we could come over here and I'll just make these stereo groups that we wanted to have one group that was really kind of set for, normal dynamics, and one that's kind of like really processed and kind of squashed. So maybe you want like the attack of drums, but you want the punch of the attack of uncompressed, unprocessed drums, but maybe the punch of, kind of that kind of, smoothness and impact from heavily compressed, but you kind of want the elements of both of those. So that's where we could do kind of parallel processing. So I'm going to send this to 2 different groups. So I will come here to my sends, and I'm going to say, let's send these all to group 1. If I hold down my, I'll activate quick link. So these will all be sent to group 1 and to group 2. So I'll turn these all on. And I will just come over here. So now we're going to have each of these tracks being sent directly to both groups. So we're going to take all the drums. And now our drums are going to be sent to both destinations. So if I wanted to solo this group, my drums are going to this group, and my drums are going to this group. But let's say in my second group, I wanted to really apply a heavy-handed compressor. So just come here and do my standard compressor. So if I listen to, and I'll just do some makeup gain on this. So say we're going to just totally squash. And now I could bring this in. So if I wanted to take mute so now we'll bring in so we hear that this is going to be kind of the heavily compressed. And now I'll bring this in and blend those two and kind of find a sweet spot. And that's kind of what you're able to do. So we're sending it to 2 different parallel sources, and each of these paths is processed independently and differently. So that's kind of the benefit. So you can, and you can hear this a lot, especially in like Motown stuff, how like the vocals always cut through the mix is because, they're really heavily compressed on one channel and really heavily not compressed in the other channel. And it was actually, I think Bob Dennis, who was a big Steinberg user, who did a lot of the mastering for the classic Motown stuff. I think he may have been the guy that actually invented kind of parallel processing that way. And that's why on the classic Motown tracks that you hear the bass and you hear the vocals kind of regardless of how loud you're listening to it, and they're always very prominent in the mix for that reason. All right, great to see David and Kristen from Nashville. Hope you're doing well. All right, so we have Tarek from Qatar. Thanks for joining us. So I see a question, are you using Cubase using a mouse pad? So I'm currently not using a mouse pad. I just have kind of optical mice that I'm using. But I've used mice pads in the past, especially when we get like Cubase mouse pads. I think I have one on my desk. Okay, so I just see a comment. Millard Brown, haven't gotten my head around Groove Agent yet. I wanted to replace the snare, but couldn't find out how to do it. So, if you have Groove Agent on, let's say if you have your kit here. So I'll just show you, and it could be if, there's two different modes of Groove Agent, kind of beat agent or the acoustic agent. The acoustic agent, kind of those kits will be, fixed. But if I wanted to replace, but within the beat agent, I could take this particular snare. And if I wanted to replace it with another snare, I could just, kind of customize the kit. So say I want to take that snare, I could just drag it over. And now you could just kind of, replace the snares. And that's really all you had to do to kind of replace different samples, just drag and drop. Or you could also just do that directly from an individual part. So if you have a recording and you wanted to just replace the snare on that recording, you could just drag multiple files over and be able to do the replacement just by dragging files right onto a pad in Beat Agent with Groove Agent. You see Millard Brown just kind of indicated the same thing. Okay, so we see from Tarek, can you please do a session dedicated to surround mixing, including delivery of surround different formats or supported by Cubase and Nuendo? So yeah, we are probably starting in April. We're going to be doing maybe once a month. We'll do kind of a dedicated kind of focused hangout on particular topics so we could add surround sound to that. Sometimes the surround sound can be a little tricky to transmit and get across in a stereo live stream, but we could definitely do a discussion on that. We've had requests for Groove Agent, like a dedicated Groove Agent hangout, a dedicated, I think first one we'll do is like logical editing with different examples and stuff like that. But we could do one on surround. I'll put it on the list. All right, so we also had Miller just mentioning a point maybe about the replacing a snare. So if you have an audio file that you wanted to replace a drum sample with, and like almost like a trigger, I'll show you how to do that as well quite easily. I'll just revert this project. Okay, so let's say if I don't like maybe the kick drums in this particular recording. So here I have an instrument loaded, just a groove agent with kicks and different samples. So, but I want to take the timing of this particular kick. I could double click on my kick track, go to hit points tab on the left, and I'll just adjust kind of the threshold. We'll zoom in just a little bit. And now I'll just say create MIDI notes. And I'm going to do dynamic velocity. I'm going to put it onto C1 and put on the first selected track. And now I've done that, we now have our MIDI information that's being triggered. So I'll mute the audio kick drums. And the kick is now coming from Groove Agent. So if I want to make this kick louder or tune it, and that's really, and if I want to layer the original samples, the original recordings with that, I could just unmute the audio. And let's listen to the original audio without the samples, augmenting it. Now we'll turn on the samples. So that's an easy way of kind of doing like drum replacement type tasks. Okay, so we see what's the difference between Groove Agent 5 and Groove Agent SE. So we have the full Groove Agent version, and some of the things that make that unique. It's kind of the ability, it gives you more kits. It will have kind of a percussion agent. So I'll go ahead and add it. So we have Groove Agent SE, which is, you know, incredibly capable that we see here, but I'll just go ahead and add an instance of the full Groove Agent. So as I'll add my instrument, we'll see that these will look, you know, miraculously similar because they'll have a lot of the same functionality. Groove Agent, the full version, can have up to 4 different agents. So if I want to have an acoustic kit here, a percussion, if I wanted to add, you know, more samples, you know, more hybrid type sounds. One of the agents that you get in the SE version, I'll just throw in something here. So let's say I'll just take this rock track and I'll go to my percussion agent. So as soon as I go to the percussion agent here, just... Okay, so I'll just go to percussion agent and I will just come over. Let's do with maybe Disco Craze, because that would be the antithesis of like a hard rock track here. So now I could have my own. So while we do this, I could just say, okay, we're going to have this play along and synchronize to the tempo. So I'll just hit play. And now we could have kind of a full percussion ensemble. And here we could have our different patterns. And this will automatically tempo sync. And within the percussion agent, you have not only all your kind of different percussion instruments that will be tempo synced, but you could go to the patterns and say, I want more complexity. And you could bring in different instruments from your percussion agent. say I want to do more shaker, another shaker. And each of these instruments, you could come over here, tune, add more room. So you could have, 4 different agents. Once you want to look at your different sources. So a lot of times I see people just kind of, have their track and they put a percussion agent on and then they call it produced. But, so that's kind of always an interesting thing. But you could also come over here and be able to, edit the patterns for each of the different agents. So if you wanted to, come over here and just say, okay, I wanted to, program directly inside of, here to make my own patterns. So you can make your own kind of beats directly within the editor. There's also going to be different performance optimizations. So if you wanted to do like different note repeat type functions, you have kind of more performance controls, multiple agents. When you do a drum loop that you drag in, you could also kind of say, okay, it could do an analysis and say that we are, this is the snare, this is the kick, this is the hi-hat, and use this one instance of the snare for anything that's classified as a snare. Groove Agent, we could also sidechain directly into Groove Agent, so in the full version. So if you wanted to make your own drum samples, you're able to do all of your own recording for, within Groove Agent. So let's say if I just wanted to do a quick like beat agent type of function. So I'll just come over here. But you could have the ability to, sample directly into Groove Agent. So if you want to make your own kits, you could have it where anytime you hit a particular MIDI note, that note is captured. It will capture the velocity, and then you could build your own drum kits in kind of very much an automated process. So you have the inclusion of more kits. You have twice you can have up to 8 times the number of patterns. You can have 4 agents, the percussion agent, the ability of sampling, and the performance controls. Those are some of the things that make kind of the full version of Groove Agent unique from the full from Groove Agent SE that comes with Cubase. Okay, so we have a question. If I add Omnisphere with multi MIDI channels, is there a way to open Omni from, say, channel 2 MIDI track? Right now, in case of opening it from the first channel where you see the E icon. So if we have, I'll just do a new project here. Okay, so let's say if I have, and I'll just do this with maybe Halion Sonic SE. Let's see if I understand. I'll just read the question. I don't have Omnisphere on this computer. Okay, so if we have multiple MIDI channels here, is there a way to open Omni, say channel 2 MIDI track? So if I come here, we could say this is going out of Halion Sonic SE. I start as an instrument track. But if I have that selected and I choose to add MIDI tracks, so let's say I wanted to add 7 MIDI tracks, these MIDI tracks will automatically get routed to the same instrument. And then I can see that this is going to be routed to MIDI channel 2. This will be MIDI channel 8, 7. So if we look here, and we can see it reflected inside of Halion Sonic SE, and you could just come right here, and so just by adding MIDI channels underneath those MIDI channels will be routed to the primary instrument with all the additional MIDI channels added just like that. So let me know if that's what you want to see, Benny. Okay, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. So it seemed, I just wanted to make sure, I'm sure I'll get this answer in a half hour, if the streaming problems seem to be working better. So let me know. Okay, my chat field just kind of jumped on me. All right. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that as well. Okay, so we have a question. Greg, can you show how to transpose the chord track in the info line? You answered this on Facebook, but mine doesn't work. All right, so I'm glad you asked a question. Yeah, so let's go ahead and... Okay, so this project has chord track in it. Okay, so I'm going to just select all of my chords here. And you could do this also just by, I think if you hold down Shift and double click on the first chord. And then I see root key. And then as I just scroll up and down using my mouse scroll wheel, that's how we could just transpose the chord track. So just using the scroll wheel of my mouse to go up and down to transpose accordingly. But let me know if you're doing something wrong. So I saw someone else mention that if you have the this track selected, maybe if you have the... So try just, and let's say if we have the scale selected, you may not see it, but again, just select the first chord, hold down Shift, and double click, and adjust accordingly. Okay, so we see that the streaming is better. That's good. Don't want to waste my whole Friday afternoon. All right, so I see Gareth has more bass lines for me. So yeah, just send the tracks over. I'd be happy to play bass for you. So enjoyed the last song a lot. All right, so we have a question from Amir. This is amazing. Are you going to have these sessions in the future? If yes, when? Thank you. So we've been doing them since the pandemic started. I think we have kind of our 1 year anniversary on Wednesday when we kind of kicked it off again. But for the last year, since March 17th of last year, we've been doing them on Tuesday and Friday afternoons. Usually we do them at 1 p.m. Eastern. I think we missed a couple because of some work commitments, but we've been trying to do Tuesday and Friday afternoons at US time, of 1 p.m. Eastern, and we're now in daylight saving times in the U.S. So if you're in another country, just be cognizant of that and be aware. All right, so I just see from Anne Marie Kearney, new to Cubase, previously using Sonar. Welcome to Cubase. So see, I had great sound the other day, but now gone. Not sure if I need to reinstall. So generally, if it's with your audio interface, if you just come over here and make sure you go to your studio setup, and you'll see audio system. And then you'll see ASIO driver listed, and you could just click here and just route it directly out to whatever audio interface that you have. If that looks correct there, it looks like it's going to the correct audio interface. Go to your studio menu to audio connections. Click on the outputs tab. So you could either have the output selected there, or if you're running the control room, you could have the outputs defined but not connected. And with Cubase Pro, you could come over here, right click, and you'll see add monitor. And at that point, we could have my monitors here, and this is where I choose to, on my first monitors, which are my Yamaha HS7s, I could just have these routed directly to the outputs of my audio interface. So try getting those things set up, Anne, and hopefully that should get everything going back so you could hear. All right, so we have an S1 user watching, so welcome to our Hangout. If you have any questions, please let us know. All right, so we see from sub 403, Greg, can you please go over the signal path of the control room? So, all right, so there used to actually be kind of I don't think it's in there anymore, but there used to be kind of a whole, probably the person who did the control room originally had a whole kind of signal path option there. It may have come off like a bit bragging. I don't think it's going to be in there anymore. So when we have our control room set up, so we could think of the control room as just being more of the monitoring source of the particular channel. So when we, if you've worked with large format consoles, you realize that, you have a lot of the same channels repeated over and over, with your input gain, maybe inserts that you could turn on and off, EQs, maybe, dynamics. We're going to have, different settings to have access to all these, all your typical settings, where it's going to be kind of the same for all the channels. But most of the mixed consoles, like the advanced ones, like I used to work on the SSLs when I worked in studio, have a center section, and that's going to be the control room. So the control room is going to allow you to take kind of the whole project here, and we have our gain structure of our mix here. So as we play, so a lot of people think of this as like their master volume, but what we could do is we have our master fader, and this is just my monitoring level. So this is how loud I want to monitor the signal. It doesn't affect the gain structure. So if I came and adjusted my master volume and exported, that would, basically truncate the signal. That would make this signal louder of my file that I mixed. But a lot of times what I want to do is just to monitor this. So our mix is still going on, and the output of this mix is being sent into the control room. So it doesn't affect the gain structure here. But I can adjust my monitoring volume here. And there's going to be different processes. So if I want to listen to this in mono or stereo, you could also have different plugins. So let's say if I want to go here, let's go to... So say I'll just make it stereo here. And if I wanted to have plugins that just affected like my monitoring path, like maybe a room correction EQ, we could have plugins here. And if I wanted to have like so this way I could have different meters, and plugins that I have here don't actually affect the mix. So if I export it and had plugins here, this is just for the monitoring. And as we work with this, we could also say, you know, we could have our headphone mixes, bring in external inputs. So if someone brings in their iPad and they say, oh, give me a cable and I want to listen to it, you know, to this in comparison to my mix, you could come over here and have external inputs as well. So the control room, you know, allows you to do, and if you have multiple pairs of monitors, what's really handy is the ability to, you know, come over here and say, okay, we're going to be in our main tab, and I could just switch between different monitors. So let's say I had, you know, Yamahas and JBLs and Genelecs or whatever. I could just come right here and switch between my different monitors. So if they're in 5.1, stereo, mono, you could just, you know, switch between your different speakers as well. Now, each of those speakers could also have its own set of plugins. So if you wanted to run a limiter plugin, or if you wanted to run EQ because you thought that the tweeters were harsh on your monitors. But again, that doesn't affect the overall mix. So this kind of gives you a whole control room area that you can monitor different elements without affecting the gain structure of your mix. Okay. See Agent K is giving 2 thumbs up for the Cubase Discord, so it's a wonderful resource of information. Okay, so we see Gareth is dancing. All right. So I could just see, I see a question. Any reggae loops on the latest product? So let's come over here and take a quick look. Right, just my email's blowing up today. So let's say if I wanted to come over here to different loops, so, you know, you could pick kind of different categories. So let's say if I wanted to come, and I'll just take a look in the big media bay. So it may not be, I'm not sure if it's going to be tagged reggae or not, but if we come over here to factory content, so we'll say, you may have. Let me just see if I could. So here we could say, okay, we want like blues music, but let's come over here. So some different reggae. Looks like we have some different MIDI loops that we could play. So may not be as many as you want, but if I wanted to just some different drum loops and MIDI loops here, so but there are some MIDI loops for reggae, but I wouldn't. It would probably be fair to say that it's not, may not have, hundreds or thousands of reggae loops. So, but you can make them quite easily in Cubase. All right, so reading through comments. Okay, so I just see, how does style relate to MIDI in Groove Agent? So, so if we have a new Groove Agent kit loaded here, so this will allow you to load up like different, like patterns that are made. So let's say if we go to Groove Agent SE, and I come over here, I'll just start off with kind of a generic kit. And let's say if I just wanted to take this kit and let's say while we're kind of playing, and let me just check that if you now come over here to different styles, that you could load up different preset patterns for different sources here. So this is kind of allows you to, when you see the styles, think of these as like preset drum beats that you don't have to program. So you can say, I want blues, I want it a blues rock, I want it to have, more roots reggae patterns. So you could just have all these different types of patterns, and that's how the styles, think of them as patterns for Groove Agent. Okay, so a question from Elena. Tuning Van VST. Can you talk about tuning of instruments, please? So, different instruments could allow you to have different tuning options. So if I wanted to come to, let's go to maybe Italian Sonic SE. And here we could set kind of, what A is set to. So if you're wanted to be, I know like when I've gotten to work with Stevie Wonder in the past, he's definitely an A is 442 guy. So you could just come right here and make a 442 as opposed to 440. So, some of the different instruments will have different tuning options like that. So most of our pitched instruments will do, if you wanted to get into more like, advanced piano tuning, we could go to something like the Grand. And as we have a particular instrument loaded up, so let's say we go to our C7 here, that when you go to options, that here you could have, different tuning scales that you could have as well. So this way, if you wanted to have different temperaments, pure minor, pure major for different keys, you could have that set up in the Grand so that you could have kind of very advanced tuning on, note by note basis. So. Okay. So we see from May 4th, never used Cubase. I'll be learning what it can do. So it's probably, most comprehensive mobile DAW for Android and iOS. And all your projects could be imported directly into Cubase. All right, so we have a question. Do you keep the MIDI file like this for the final mix, or do you convert it to the WAV format? So the only time that I would convert it to a WAV format is if I was handing off the file to someone who maybe didn't have that instrument. I would maybe pass along a WAV file, or if having that many live virtual instruments was causing my computer to strain. And then, playing back an audio file versus a very complex instrument can be much easier in a computer. So that's when I would choose to do it. If you're not in one of those situations, there's no need, there's no sonic difference or no workflow need to convert your MIDI that's routed to a virtual instrument or to an external instrument that's routed into the Cubase audio engine through the audio connections. There's no need to convert that into audio before doing it. So once you do your export audio mix down, all of your instrument tracks, they'll automatically just be rendered as audio the same way. All right, so we see from, I think it's maybe Lisa or Liza Carroll. Hello, I'm Liza or Lisa. Sorry if it says I'm currently using Reaper and I'm considering using Cubase Artist. So welcome to the Hangout. And if you have any questions, please let us know. We do these Hangouts twice a week. So again, we're just here to help you get up and running on your Cubase. So thanks for joining us. Welcome. All right, so we see Space Crawler got his trackball finally, so that's great. All right, and we have Stefan checking in from Mexico. Okay, so I see from JVI, it says Groove Agent pattern follow-up, kit dubstep kit 01. If the song is not playing, then pad will go back to start. When song is playing, then this multiple of 8 starts. All right, so let's go ahead and try it out. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. And if you've learned something new, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can get notified of future events and Hangouts. Okay, so let's see, like let's say while it's playing. Okay, so let's say, all right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and play back. All right, so let's say now, if I just wanted to, yeah, so I think, the intention is that when you switch that it could automatically go to the particular, so it could be in sync. Let me just see if there is, so if I now wanted to just kind of do a, all right, so let me see if there's maybe a quick preference for this. Sorry, my email box is blowing up. I probably have 50 emails as soon as I get off the Hangout. I kind of remember some setting. It may have been another program that would allow you to kind of where it would wait for it to switch. Let me just see. Like if it did it immediately now or. Let me just see if it was a Groove Agent kit or maybe a. So I'll just come over here to an acoustic agent kit and see. So I know you want to do JVI. I'll take a look at it after the Hangout if you want to email me. But I thought that there's a way to, have it automatically snap to the beginning of the bar, but it could be another tool that I'm thinking of. But I'll see if there's a way. But I understand. Thank you for the clarification. All right. So we have Marcello from Canada checking in. Welcome to the Hangout. Okay, so Space Crawler got his Kensington, or the Expert Wireless from Kensington for your trackball. Congratulations. Okay, Sub 403 wants everyone to hit the like button. Okay, so we have a question. Can you explain what acoustic agent means? All right, so, we have two different styles of instruments. We have the acoustic agent, which is going to be set up for doing and this will be more of a dedicated fixed, like a actual drum kit that's been sampled. So, but in some of the things that are different from acoustic agents, when we go to our pads, we can't necessarily drag and drop. These will be fixed because it's going to be kind of in context of a particular sound or a particular kit. So sometimes if you switch to snare, you may still, this snare has been sampled not only in the room mics and the overheads. So all of this is kind of tied together. So this is kind of a fixed entity as far as sounds. So because, and why it gets into detail is, this snare is going to ring a little bit into the hi-hat mic. It's going to bleed a little bit. This snare, when I trigger the snare, can not only trigger the snare mic on top, but the snare mic on the bottom, plus the snare samples and the overheads and the room mics. So, switching just one sample, to replace just a snare, is not going to necessarily work for making a cohesive drum part, because you're not going to replace, the 32, up to 32 velocity layers and multiple sources and destinations and bleed throughout the whole kit. So the acoustic agent's going to be more like on a particular kit. You could choose to, as you do this, you'll have different playback patterns. So when we get to our playback patterns, I could also, with my acoustic agent, I could choose to have different levels of complexity and different levels of dynamics. So these patterns, I could also just do, let's say every measure, just come over here and do 1 or 2 levels of complexity variations, and we could have it do an autofill for us as well. Say every 2 measures, let's say every 4 measures. So it has this kind of artificial musical intelligence if I want to put more swing on a pattern. And when we get into the mixer is also going to be a bit different because we'll have our snare. So if I just want to solo the snare, and this will sum, since it's not just one microphone, this will sum all of the snares, into this one particular microphone. And when we wanted to come over here, we could have our 4 bands of parametric EQ. We could have compression, tape saturation on every single source. So let's say if I want to go to my snare and I just want to have more tape saturation just on the particular, and let's say go to, so every single source has, 4 bands of EQ, compression, tape saturation, and an envelope shaper. So if I want it, more attack, that you could have access to all this. And just like a large mix console, I could go over here to my effects sends and go to the aux. Say, okay, I want to add a reverb. And let's go back to the agent here. Then I could just add, 4 effect sends, 4 insert effects, and I could have everything kind of treated as groups. So, I would say if you're doing more, like I want to emulate like a real drum kit, that's when the acoustic agent has a lot of benefits. And if I wanted to do more of an MPC style manipulation and paradigms, that's when I could use beat agents. And unlike other tools, Groove Agent allows you to work in both modes. So that makes it, a really compelling tool to be able to kind of cover all of your different drum needs. So. All right. Hi, guys. Does Cubase have an instrument track, or an instrument rack as in Ableton? Yeah, we kind of invented that in 96, I think. So if you just come over here, you could see your VST instruments here as they're loaded. So if I wanted to come right over here, I could just say, let's go to, I want to create an instrument track. I could just say, okay, let's add a retro log. I want it to come here, and we could just add them directly into our rack. And now let's add a pad shop. So they'll all show up here. And if we wanted that rack to be decoupled from the right zone, you could just hit F11, and you could have the VST instrument rack kind of be its own floating window. So you could now just kind of move this as you see fit. So, and once that's open, you could route MIDI to any of those different instruments. So we have a question from Lewis. Hi, I'm new here. Welcome to the Hangout. But would like to ask, is it possible to upgrade from Cubase 10 LE to Cubase 211 Pro? Yes, definitely. So you could go to the Steinberg online shop. Some dealers are able to do it. I know we have one dealer in the US that could do it, but it's mostly handled on the Steinberg online shop. And then you could, when you go to Cubase 11, just go to shop Cubase 11 Pro, you could say upgrade from, Cubase Artist, Elements, Cubase, AI, LE, and then you're able to, upgrade directly from your Cubase LE right up to the latest, greatest version. So just see Sir Robert, like the rock and disco craze beat is fire, so that's good. You just put the percussion agent on any track and it kind of works. So you see a question: how do I sidechain in Cubase LE elements? So I don't think that sidechaining is in the Cubase LE version. I think it was brought into Cubase Elements, now has sidechaining with version 11. But if you if you have version 11, all you'd have to do is, let's say if you add an audio track and I wanted to sidechain. Sorry, my son is knocking on the door. He may be done with his PE class. Bear with me just for a moment. Sorry for the interruption. My son's weekend has started. His school has ended. All right, so I believe that in Cubase 11, the sidechain was brought down to Cubase Elements. And how it works is we could, if we have a plugin on a particular track, so that's sidechainable. So let's say our dynamics are often a good place to start. I could now set up the sidechain routing and say, okay, I want this to come from this particular instrument, and now activate the sidechain, and that would feed the sidechain for that particular source. All right, my chat field just jumped on me. Sorry about that. I see I have lots of questions in my future. All right, let's just try to find my spot. Okay. Okay, so I just see a question. When you bounce a track for performance reasons, what's the best way to quickly bounce a new version of the rendered track over the previous one? Thanks for these streams. All right, so there's a couple different ways. So if it's like a VST instrument, one way to do it is, let's say I just have... Okay, so let's say if I want to go to... All right, so let's say I wanted to just... sorry about that. Let me just make that in the right track. All right, so when we play this, we'll just have a... Okay, so if I wanted to, let's say this is taking up too much of my CPU resources, and I wanted to, just turn that into an audio file. If I have just a track selected, not the event, but the track, I could come over here to edit, and I can just say render in place, and I'll go to my render settings. And once I have the track selected, I can say, okay, we're going to do our channel settings, and I want to remove the source track. So we can see that this has my MIDI in it. I'll say render. We'll see that it's now going to render it and then remove the MIDI track, and then just automatically it's just turned directly into just an audio file that is not taking any of my CPU resources. So that way it's kind of just taking that whole process. So just do a quick render in place. You could also choose to, if you wanted to go back to have the MIDI information, one of the things you could do is to, we could say disable the source tracks. So let's say this is taking up my CPU power. I hit render. And now this, so I will just hit the render button this time. So I'll go to my render settings. So it'll say as one event, and I'll say disable source tracks. So once we do that, this track is now in the instrument have been disabled. So it's not taking any CPU power. And then my audio track is directly underneath. So if I needed to go back and change the note or do editing in MIDI, at that point we could just, enable that track by selecting the track, right-clicking, enable, make any change we need to, and then render in place again. Okay, so we have a question. Is it possible to open YouTube browser directly in Cubase so that I can, for example, use the tips from this tutorial while watching it without having to switch between Cubase and YouTube? So, Cubase doesn't have a web browser in it. So you would have to kind of switch or just kind of set it up. Like when I do all of my indexes, I, could have, like Cubase on half the screen and have, YouTube on the other half of the screen. So say if I wanted to just come here, I'll break the space-time continuum by going to my Hangout while I'm on it. But, so I know a lot of people will just kind of watch the video here and do stuff in Cubase and just kind of have stuff set up, on one screen to, try different ideas. So that's something that you could do quite easily. But, Cubase doesn't have a web browser in it for watching the tutorials within it. So, but every computer has one, I think. All right, so we see Space Crawler saying, nice hangout, by the way. My thumb is always in. That's great. All right, so we have Peter sending greetings from Montreal, Canada. It's a beautiful city. All right, so we have Neurotic Nexus for checking in from Germany. Great to see you on a hangout. We hope everything's going well. All right, so we have a question. Is it possible to buy Cubase Pro by paying a monthly fee? I'm a student and broke, and I need an update from Elements. So currently we don't offer, Steinberg doesn't offer financing options or rent to own. A lot of dealers kind of do that, and people often use credit cards for that. May not necessarily want to do that for but people do that all the time. So currently, maybe I know some dealers that have, payment plans set up in the United States. I'm not sure where you're based, but, you can check with your dealer if they have such, financing options available. So. Okay, so we see Space Crawler's going to subscribe to the channel. That's great. And the more likes and subscribers we have, it's, enables us to do these live streams to help everyone out. All right, so we see Pro Wash DFW's getting his lunch. Okay, so it seems like the stream is working better after I rebooted, so sorry for that. Pablo's doing his pre-dinner. Right, in Spain, it's different hours. All right, so I see how to connect Cubase 11 Pro with OBS Studio while direct monitoring. So I'm not sure if you want to record directly from OBS Studio. I'm using OBS currently for the stream as we work with this, and how I have this configured, and I get this question a lot from different people. I have one audio interface for, there's different tools and utilities that people use. My approach is to have one audio interface for Cubase, which is a UR24C, and I use a separate a mixer, a Yamaha mixer with a USB output, and that USB output is what OBS uses to transmit on. But I don't think OBS has ASIO support, so but it is an open system. So if they had ASIO, you might be able to do some more sophisticated routing to it. But currently it doesn't have ASIO support, I don't believe. All right. So Jazz Dude is mentioning it was a great resource is Computer Music Magazine, where you can buy one issue and get access to for, all sorts of great content. All right. All right, so when is Cubase 12 coming? I guess the answer is when it's ready. So, Cubase 11 was just released in November. So, I'm sure that there's lots of our development team working really hard and coming out with new stuff. So they're working on stuff. So, all right, what to expect from Cubase 12? Magic. So all of your dreams answered. So we usually don't discuss products before release so much. So. Okay, so a question from Paul Claridge. Hello, Greg. If I import many audio files and try out different tracks, but I have so many tracks it's hard to navigate, can I delete some from the project and pull them back out from the pool later? Yeah, so let's come over here. I'll just import a number of files. So. All right, let me just find. All right, so I'll just. Okay, so say I'm going to import a bunch of files and I'll put them on different tracks. All right, so now I wanted to come over here and I will just, let's say, remove selected tracks. And now when I go to the pool, they're still going to be referenced in the pool. And I could just kind of pull these out. Again, unless I choose to go to my media menu. And if I choose to remove unused media, that would lose the reference. But once we're here, you could just, remove the particulars, remove the selected tracks, and they're still going to be in the pool. And you could audition and play back those files at any time, just right there. So they'll always be in the pool until you kind of tell it not to be. Okay, so we just have a question. On Very Audio, is there any way you can listen with the loaded effect? So I'm not sure, maybe if you could specify what the loaded effect is. So yeah, if you could let me know what the loaded effect is, that would be helpful. All right, so we see people apologizing for that their English is horrible. It's, we probably all have to do this in English because I'm horrible at every other language. So don't worry about it. But, it's, being able to, as long as you get your questions in and answered, hopefully everyone could learn something despite language differences. I remember being with one of my German colleagues, and he was really jet lagged. And I think we had dinner in Hollywood, and we were driving back, showing him all sorts of stuff. And he was like, "I'm so tired, I can't think in English anymore." So, All right, so we have what plugin do you use for euphoric melodies? So I'm not sure if it's like a plugin on a vocal or a plugin on a particular, synth. So orchestral stuff is obviously really good for that. But let's say, let's take a look at, for an instrument, if you wanted to come here, you could do, let's take a look at maybe some of the new Retrolog stuff from Imagineer. So there's a whole new library that Online Music Foundry has done. So maybe we'll try a couple of synth leads, and I'm not a great player. So let's just go ahead and there's euphoric chords. And I'll try just a glider. But you may see some like pad sounds as well. It could often be used for. And so maybe if you could let us know, if you're doing more, maybe processing on a particular file, like a vocal file, something like the multi-tap delay could be good for that as well. All right, so we have Roland checking in from Sweden. All right. Okay, so just see kind of from Placid or Rodriguez on Very Audio. Is there any way you could listen with the loaded effect? So, if you're doing just editing to listen to it. So say if we jump back to this project here. One thing is if you may have to activate the control room. So I'm going to just come over here to Very Audio. So if I'm listening, sorry about that. Let me just turn down my control room volume here. So in Very Audio, so if you don't hear it, make sure that you go to your audio connections and that your control room is active and outputs are set. And there's also in the control room this little acoustic feedback. So if it's that if you mean you want it to hear. You could just use your up down arrow keys to do different to hear the changes as you do it. But if you could let me know again what you mean with the loaded effect. Okay, so question, is there a way to trigger parts of an arrangement track and a way to trigger markers from both a MIDI controller for performance purposes? So if you wanted to, so let me just load up a project that has some arranger track going on. Okay, so you could kind of set up the arranger track just by doing generic remote. So let's say if I wanted to come here, and I'll just say MIDI note, and I'll just learn. So we could just trigger this, and so I'm going to just capture this note, and I want it to go to under here, command, to arranger, go to chain 1, and let's go to right. So I'll just kind of learn a couple of MIDI notes here. And the same concept, you could come okay. Then kind of, let's say while I'm playing, you could just trigger these different arranger keys with just using via the generic remote. So you could do it just like that. You could also just trigger these from keyboard shortcuts. So if you wanted to go to your key commands, you could go to the arranger track and be able to trigger the different arranger events here. So let's say if I'm here, I think it's so you could do stuff like that from keyboard shortcuts, and you know you could do kind of the same for keyboard shortcuts for markers, or again just being able to navigate to, instead of into rangers, you just wanted to go to marker, navigate to you could just navigate to markers here as well. So let's say you could just choose to go to, marker button 1, marker button 2, etc. So you could assign those through generic remote or through keyboard shortcuts. So we have a question from Michael Pierce. Good to see you on the Hangout. If I work on a remotely, then bring a session back that that doesn't know anything about my audio IOs, or a quick way to import them from another session. Else 96 reconnects to do. So a lot of times you probably don't have to, some of the tricks you could do. If you wanted to, let's say I'll just do a new empty project. And as we go here, let's say I have, 12 audio tracks, and I wanted to, assign these to different, inputs. Let's say if I go to my audio connections and I have, at this point, you could hold down like the shift key I think if you hold down just a shift key that you could, so there's some ways that I think it's like the shift key you could, and I've had this work on some Hangouts and not others, but if you wanted them to all be routed to the same destination, you could hold down the the Alt plus Shift. You could also just hold down Shift and that could ripple the inputs and outputs. Some people I know will come over here and you'll just import. And if it's done from a tempo, you could say import tracks from project. So let's say I wanted to go here to this particular project. And then as you go to import them, let's say if you have a template, you could choose to import it to existing tracks in your project, which could contain all of the routing and channel and inspector settings as well. So, but in some situations, you may have to do a little bit of manual routing. All right, good to see Kyle Kennedy on a Hangout. Okay, so you just see, hi Greg, how would we sidechain to a plugin that does not show the sidechain option at the top? Thanks. So a lot of times, it's, one way of doing it. So let's say I'll just import a couple of loops here real quick, some vocals.
Remember me, I'm too tired. Are we here alone? Am I really brave enough?
Okay, so what some people will do is just kind of use, let me just, is if they have let's say these are going to a particular, obviously it's best, if the plugin itself does side chaining, but if it's kind of like an effect that you would use for like a send effect, so let's say, okay, I want to come here to Revelation. So now we've added kind of, let's don't do it I'll just do it as a send here. So let's add an effects channel track, and this will, let's say, go to Reverence. And when we go to the effects return channel here, just go to your inserts, and then you could often just kind of put in, one kind of old trick is just to put in your dynamics, like a side chainable compressor here. And this way you could feed the side chain, from the source. So let's say if I wanted to take this and I wanted audio 01 to be the side chain for the reverb. So now as soon as we have this, so you could have it kind of side chained, have this particular track. Let me just turn this off. Let's see if that's so, but just on the effects channel, try just to come here and feed the compressor into it. So we could just say, and I'll just do, let's see if we can just get like a really large haul.
me.
Okay, so I will now, if I did this right, let me just...
Remember me.
So I think I just some routing wrong, but if you that way you could actually just kind of apply kind of like the sidechain like compressor before the effect, and that's one way of being able to accomplish it. But you could always contact the plugin manufacturer that wants to that you want to sidechain, tell them that you'd like it. All right, so a question. Hi, Greg. Even though we do not have slave computers, should we use Vienna Ensemble Pro like programs to reduce load on Cubase? What can you say about that? So it may reduce the load in Cubase, but it could increase the load on your computer. So it could get you, you could have the same problem in the long run. I think why people sometimes, if they have a big orchestral library, and if they switch projects, they don't have to reload the samples every single time, that they just kind of, the samples will kind of stay resident in Vienna Ensemble Pro. So just like the load time on a larger like orchestral project could be minimized, which is why some people do it. But you are, it's sometimes you're cutting your tail off a little bit processor wise, because Cubase may be using less processor, but other functions of your computer memory are still being tied up in running VE Pro. But running multiple libraries where you don't want the libraries to load every time you load a new project is the advantage of doing it. I see Jazz Dude just answered the same way. Gareth is telling that Kyle Kennedy that he missed the Backbone plus the Portico plugin giveaway for being late. So had to be on time. All right. All right, so we have a question. I'm interested in Cubase IC for Android. Will be available anytime soon, or do you have any other suggestion for remote control Cubase 11 Pro? Thanks. So I haven't heard of any plans for an Android version of IC or IC Pro, so I haven't heard of that. I haven't looked into a lot of additions for remote control. I'm sure there's some. I think you could check to see if, I'm not sure if Touch OC or Lemur is available on Android. I think one of them is, but a lot of those seem to be quite popular as well. So, but I'm sure that there are some Android apps for that. All right, so Michael Teams wants everyone to smash the like button and subscribe. All right, so we have Timothy Samarin from Las Vegas. Welcome to Hangout. All right, so you see just a comment from Jazz Dude. Cubase is 22 years old. If you're like mid-20s when it started, you're going to be soon 50. So I think Cubase is 32 years old, so even older and more capabilities. Yep, and Jazz Dude just corrected himself. So Okay, so if I see a question from Kyle Kennedy. I forgot how to switch MIDI control to the patterns in Groove Agent. Guess I'll just head over to the Cubase index tomorrow. What we could just show it to you now as well. So if you wanted to switch, so if we have Groove Agent here, all right, so it could just load into different patterns here, but if you come, let's say we go to our pattern mode. So as soon as you click on pattern mode here, you can put this into Omni, and that will allow you to have a separate port for just like when we go to, you'll have Groove Agent. So you could have kind of a separate port for, for doing the patterns versus triggering notes. So just try activating this here, and that way there will be a dedicated MIDI port for the pattern pads. So just try to turn that on, but make sure that you're in pattern mode and just click on Omni there. All right, so I just see a question. Could you explain for using VST Connect Pro? Must have just Cubase Pro. Can we use VST Connect Pro in Cubase LE? I have VST Connect in my Cubase Pro. I want to know if it's different from VST Connect P5. So I don't think you could run it in Cubase LE, but the intention is if you have VST Connect Pro, which is you'll see in the Pro version here, just like from the cloud. But anyone else that you're recording, they just could download on Mac or PC. They could download the VST Connect Performer software, and that's independent of Cubase. So you should be able to. So I'm not sure if you need to run it in Cubase LE or just have someone else that's running VST Connect that you're recording, but the person that's being recorded doesn't need to be to have a Cubase license. All right, great to see Chase on the live stream. So we get to see him 3 times in 1 week. That's great. So we saw him on the Zoom on Saturday. It's great to meet you there. Thanks for joining us. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, so I just see a question from Robbie Bowling. I own most of my own acoustic drum samples. Does the acoustic agent come with Cubase 11? Yeah, so when you have Groove Agent SE, you could work in kind of 2 different modes, acoustic agent and beat agent. So it's there, and you have a number of different kits. You have like a studio kit as well as one called The Kit that come with Cubase 11. Okay, just okay. All right, so all right, just reading through comments. Lots of great discussion. That one day I'll be able to take part in. So that's why I kind of like the Zoom sessions, so I could actually take part and talk to you guys and not be 30 minutes behind. Okay. So seeing a lot of great comments on people discovering how great an instrument Retrolog is. Okay, my chat field just jumped on me. Okay, so I think I'm back to where I was. Okay. Oh, Taylor Sapp has joined us. Great. Thanks that you're able to join us. So a question from Taylor. Does Cubase AI require an e-licenser? Cubase AI will work off of a soft e-licenser, so you do not need a USB e-licenser. Okay, so a question from Taylor. In 10.5, my previewer volume in Media Bay doesn't work. I'm running through Control Room. Is it because I'm using it with Windows 7 or am I missing something? So check, so I'm not sure. So let's say if I was going through Groove Agent here, or previews, I'll just jump back. And let's say I was just going through some different loops here. All right, so as I do this, I could see the preview volume is functioning. So I'm not sure if it's because you're using Windows 7, so you're running through the control room. One thing to check is it could be, I don't know if you're using it with headphones or not. If you're using with headphones, if you go to the preferences and go to VST to control room, try coming over here and try toggling the use phones channel as preview channel. So if that's checked and you don't have the headphones, that might prevent that from being able to work. That's one thing I would kind of check, Taylor, is just that preference and see if that makes a difference for you. It could be a Windows 7 thing. I haven't run Windows 7 in a long time, but I would check that preference first and see if that makes a difference. Okay, we see a question, Greg. How do you stop the names on the mixer channels from truncating? So I think that Windows and Mac behave differently, and I just kind of raised this with some of our quality assurance team. But if I go, so I think that the Windows version, and for a while it seemed not to do this, but if I just kind of keep typing like a long name on my Mac, I'll see kind of 2 rows of text. And on Windows, it truncates to not be 2 rows of text for some reason. So it worked, I think, briefly in 10.51 and then went away in 10.52. But I just, so that if you're on Windows, it could be that. I'm not sure if we'll see it addressed, but I'll mention it and reiterate it again. All right, good to see the Pablo's back from dinner. All right, so we have checking in from Peru. Thanks for joining us. right, so just see Space Crawlers mentioning it. Render in place is a lifesaver on huge projects. So yeah. All right. So thanks for all wonderful comments. So we're doing on time. So we're doing great. Okay, so we just see how to change the speed of a song. Do you have to go through settings, or can you just alt drag like FL? So, here we just, if you want to change it, you just kind of change the time, the tempo. So if I'm here and I wanted to take, if all my audio tracks were in musical mode, which is kind of how it is a lot of times by default, really all you have to do. So I'll just select all my tracks here and just put it into musical mode. So as I just change my tempo, I could just come right here or just type in a tempo. So I want it to be 96. "88 beats a minute," or 128. So I guess you could drag here if you wanted to, just in your tempo, or just use your scroll wheel to adjust accordingly. All right, so we have a question. Why does Cubase not support VST2 format? It does. So it supports VST2. I think, 2.4 is the latest, but it's also, VST2 is, let's see, what year was it? It might have been 2006. Yeah, I think 2006 is when VST3 was out, but we still support VST2, but we don't support 32-bit plugins. All right, we see according to Michael Teams that Pablo is famous. That's good to know. All right, good to see Kai in Hangout. All right, so we see a great comment from Captain Energy Music regarding the student who wants Cubase but can't swing the cost. There is student pricing available. So, that's a great point. There's pretty aggressive educational discounts, and Sweetwater Sound has a payment plan. So, if you're in the United States, you could get it through Sweetwater and use their payment plan. And if you're in other countries, dealers may have something similar. Okay, so we see from Midnight Wind, hello there. I'm still using my Sonar Platinum from Gibson. How similar is Cubase Pro to that? I think you'll see that Cubase is, it's very much kind of the industry leader. And I think that, what you're probably doing, anything that you could do in your program, you could do quite easily inside of Cubase. And I think that you'll see that, one, it's, an actively supported platform, but also that it's, you'll find that Cubase is really kind of the innovator in the industry space that it occupies, and that we kind of deliver a lot of the features and solve problems for people, before people run into it. And, our parent company is Yamaha. So, we work, really closely, with, our core focus is music. So, that's kind of So I think that you'll see lots of, great stuff that you'll be able to work with inside of Cubase. And, we encourage you to kind of check it out, and welcome to our Hangout. So. All right, so we have a question. Why does the media bay not play sound if control room is enabled? Because when we're doing previews on different sounds, this is being routed. These aren't into projects that are not being routed to a track yet. So it's not going to play back through the track. So that's why it's kind of routed through the control room, because otherwise it could be just like a phantom input. But what input is it? Does that input have processing? Does it have the volume down? So that's kind of the intention of the media bay. So when you're auditioning your different sounds, that it's not tied to any processing that's going on, or volume changes on a particular channel, or it's not trying to occupy that. So it gives it a kind of a neutral place so you could audition stuff. You see Gareth says that I know how to contain the masses when on next generation of Cubase questions. All right. Okay, reading through more comments. And we see, according to Michael Pierce, that Cubase 12 will solve the Riemann hypothesis. So I'm sure someone's working on it. So. So I just see a question from Kai. I have a question that might be off topic. Anyone here use Scalar too? If so, I wonder why Scalar can't be used as a MIDI insert, kind of like how it can be done over in Logic Pro. Just wondering. So I don't know Scalar plugin, but I if it's like one that allows you to kind of play into scale, you already kind of have that functionality built into Cubase, but I'm not familiar with the tool, but maybe other people can contribute. All right, we see that Gareth is clarifying that the loaded effect is caused by Timothy Leary. So that's good to know. That makes sense. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we have a question from Taylor. Is there a way to search only for presets in Retrolog that use the sequencer? So like the arpeggiator, let's take a look. So I don't think any of the, it's probably going to be Imagineer, MPE, and let's say the original Retrolog library. I don't think utilize that particular function. Sometimes there may be kind of a filter. I don't think there's anything that says, arpeggiator on off, but sometimes it may say looking for ones with motion. That might be more, but I don't think there's anything that would have, like a little indication in the name, indicating that it has. So, but you could, come over here and rename your different media bay or the presets, but I don't think anything that will indicate just what is using the built-in arpeggiator. So okay, so question, do you have stuff you're working on when it comes to the next Cubase update? Also, how can we contribute? Let's say we would like some features. How can we express our feelings on this? So I do a good job of, I try to communicate, people's, desires and feature requests that we get in these Hangouts all the time. To our product planning team, I just this week I sent a year of the Cubase Hangout questions over to our product planning team. So it's probably 130 pages of all the questions from the topics, and we have pretty regular discussions. So we value this input that we get from customers, and that's what makes Cubase, an even better program with every update. So, there's a lot of people, think that something is just like, oh, just flip a switch and code and it'll do this. But, sometimes there's really, deep underlying aspects of why something can't easily be implemented or particular reasons. But, we, always send feature requests that you want. You could, send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. If you go to the Steinberg.net forums, our teams read those requests all the time. So, feel free to pass it on and make sure that you contribute, every question we have, like issues of concern, things that people like, things that people don't like, it's all kind of being monitored, and people are reading that and taking that as input. And that's why you've seen, like a lot of, fantastic features that users have wanted, being released in Cubase. So it's kind of an easy thing. You'd listen to your customers. So just keep communicating with us. So. All right, so question, is there a way to have several mixes per project that you can bounce from one to another to choose the best one? So, some people will do snapshots. Now, snapshots don't include automation, just like a still photo doesn't include video. But if you're, right up here, what a lot of people will do when they're starting before they get into a lot of tweaking of automation parameters is actually just kind of come over here and, just come here and say, okay, I want to take a snapshot. So I will just come here, click on the camera icon. We have a snapshot. So let's say I wanted to start from scratch all over again. So sometimes, when mixing, it's really easy to keep building upon something that was bad to start with. So I could say, okay, what I like to do sometimes is, like when you're totally through a mix, start all over again and see where you end up again. So let's say I come here and now I could do a snapshot. My snapshot can include my plugins, my inserts, my volume levels, my EQs, my sends. And at this point, I could take a snapshot again. So now I could go back to snapshot 1, and this will recall snapshot 1. And it's like, oh, well, what do I like in snapshot 1? Okay. Or what did I not like in snapshot 2? So when I click on snapshot 2, now I could select these particular tracks and say, you know what? I wanted to take, the channels for the selected And now I want to go to, snapshot 2 for the selected channels. Or let's say I was probably on snapshot 2. So let's say I go back to snapshot 1, but only for the selected channel. So you could do stuff like that within your mix console snapshots. So that's a pretty easy way of doing it. Some people will, just save different project names, and that's another way. And then you're able to kind of, import tracks from one project, with automation, without automation, into a master project. Okay, so we see from question from Ben, what are the best settings for the Cubase notation window piano composition? I personally often struggle with this. It's rather bloated and scrambled automatic MIDI notation. So there are a couple of things that you could do to make your notation a bit more musically legible as what musicians would want to see. So let's say I have a good example in this project that we could look at. All right, so let's say I wanted to come here to my piano part. All right, so I look at this and, it looks kind of pretty straightforward, but we go into notation and then it's like so incredibly awful. And you would never want to give this to a musician and, get a response from them immediately. They would just look at you and almost laugh. But this is technically correct to what, was played in. So there's kind of two different discrepancies of, you want it to sound musical. And if it sounds musical, like, you may rush and, push and pull the tempo of the beat a little bit, that if it sounds good, that it often looks bad. Or you could have it look good and sound very mechanical. So you can have it look good, sound bad, or look bad, sound good. But obviously we want it to look good, sound good. So a couple of things that I would do for quick piano notation is, one is just set, the key. So I think this is in A flat. I want to do a split staff for piano part. And I like to just come over here and say, the smallest note that I really intended to play was an eighth note. The smallest rest I intended was a quarter note. And then I usually kind of just check these flags here, like if you're a little ahead of the beat, behind the beat, etc. So let's say we have this, which is kind of gibberish looking. Just with these settings that I could save as a preset, I could just now hit apply. And I could just have my music print out that looks, like something a musician would actually get. So try just some of the different, set the key, set your split staff. You could set your split point. You could also go to, here and just do your display quantize. And that could get you like 90% there pretty quickly with a couple of mouse clicks. That could be saved as a preset. All right, so reading through some more comments. Okay, so it says, when I tuning vocal or use audio warp, sound be destroyed. Why? So, if I wanted to just come here, let's say if I'm just doing some very audio, that as I kind of look at it here, So let's say I just wanted to tune this whole phrase. So
I was all it was to kiss.
or I'll just take this phrase since we just jumped. But as we do this,
All it was to kiss my face. The world was like a brand new place. Felt my fears all fly away.
and let's say,
Felt my fears all fly away. Don't it make you
so I mean, that doesn't sound, I mean, that sounds perfectly fine to me if I wanted to do audio warping. I mean, if you do like super extreme, functions, but I was just doing audio warping for a client's project last night. But if I wanted to just kind of come here and say, okay, let's move this a little early. Let's move this over here. I wanted to keep this function and, so it's like, so as I just kind of pop over here again, say, okay, let's just move this earlier. Let's move that, stretch it.
I laid eyes on him.
So there I did kind of an extreme amount, so, if you do just like little tweaks here. So I say, okay, I want this word to be, just laid out right there. So, it's not intended to, and for each of these, you could have different, time stretching algorithms as well for the particular file. So if you wanted to switch, different algorithms, those will give you different results as well. Okay. All right. So we have a question. Hi, Greg. Is there any way to group VSTs in a search I like? I could put my fave VSTs in there. So if you come to your studio menu and then go to your VST plugin manager, here you can see this little plus sign, and this you can make a new plugin collection. So let's say, you got a plugin suite of 400 plugins and you like 3 of them. You could just call this my faves, just drag and drop. And if I don't click out of the window, sorry about that. So I could just drag and drop. We could also make a folder. So really favorites. And then you could drag plugins into, this particular folder, but all these can be completely customized. So you could just, and then if you wanted to just go back to, like I made one for Robbie Bowling on previous Hangouts or default. So you can make your own, plugin collections for VST effects as well as VST instruments and organize them however you want. All right, so we see sub 403s is having a run. So we just see, is there any way to make the letters in Cubase bigger, but you could do it in Cubase? It's hard for me to read considering my site. So, sometimes, some of the, you'll have different scaling options depending on if you're doing a high DPI, but there's no real thing to say, make all text bigger because, there's probably 10,000 windows that you may have to accommodate for multi-scale fonts, and that could be tricky from a user design standpoint. but maybe just try increasing the resolution on your display, or maybe get a monitor that is set up for high DPI to maybe easier to read. All right, so we see Gareth is feeding his daughter, so it's usually pizza night on Fridays for Gareth. So and we see Agent Kate's picked up on that as well. All right. Just reading through different comments. All right, so I just see a question. Can Behringer X Touch be connected to Cubase 11 elements? So let me just see if it has. I'll just take a quick look. I'll try it in 10.5 of the elements 10.5. So I believe that just works as kind of a Mackie control. So yeah, it looks like you have the control surface functionality there in Cubase Elements. Just wanted to make sure. All right, so I see from David Young that he moved to Studio One because of bad customer service in Europe. Never looked back. Would suggest Steinberg go for a monthly subscription option, which was another deciding factor for me. So we've had a lot of people that have really, been very adamant against subscription models, but we're glad to see you on the Hangout, David. All right, just gonna. Okay, so we just see from MK who was just saying it says that he's on a Mac about reading the text better. So on your Mac, you could probably come over here to your system preferences. And if you go to displays, probably all you have to do is you could change it to default for display. But if you go into your display settings, you have kind of like a bigger, medium, small, try changing it there, and that will change your resolution that Cubase is running on for your particular monitor as well. All right, so we have a question from Gareth. So, all right, let's do a new project here, or I'll just go to a different one. Thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. Again, if you've learned something new, make sure you hit the like button and that you subscribe to the channel. Okay, so we have a question from Gareth. And my time line just jumped on me, I think. All right, let me just scroll back. Okay, so what is the definition panel for? I think this is in the sample editor. So the definition panel here, and this is all right. So like, if you just wanted to place different elements here in musical mode to kind of start with, and you could automatically kind of adjust the grid. So let's say if you wanted to manually adjust the grid, so you see that when I'm in the sample editor that I can move kind of the grid based upon the different areas, or we could just have that done manually, and we could choose to have this grid be in quarter notes, eighth notes, or 16th notes. So as you would kind of, let's say if we're manually adjusting, that we could kind of just set your resolution there. And then if you totally messed up, you could just reset to your grid. So that way you could kind of set up your, the defining elements of how like hit points will be interpreted within the particular sample. All right, so let's say in the sample editor, and he said, what are the beats and regions options for in the left panel of the sample editor? All right, let me just see if it's... So I'm not sure, let's say in the left panel of the sample editor. So I'm not sure if it's in the inspector, Gareth. You can send me an email if you want. Okay, so I just see for Mark, sometimes when my metronome click stops working, but I hear the MIDI track. What is the problem, please? And when I try to change the sound of the click to vintage spike, there is no sound either. Okay, so let's say, so let's change our metronome sound here quickly. All right, so let's say if I have my metronome on. All right, so sometimes in the control room, the metronome can get turned off. So usually when people call me in frustration wondering why they can't hear the metronome, it can get turned off in the control room, just kind of like, okay, I'm just here, and I switch speakers and I clicked in the wrong area. So that's generally what it is. Now the vintage spike sometimes may not. Let's go to our metronome setup, and I'll switch the click sound to the vintage spike preset. So that is kind of a different sounding thing. So sometimes that's what the vintage spike sounds like. If you don't really hear it, try going and, make sure that you have, the click level here set. So if this is set really low, but you should be able to kind of hear, all of your different metronome options. Just kind of right there. So again, we'll come over here to the metronome setup, and I'll just say, let's go to... So I know some people may come to the metronome setup and then maybe switch it to vintage spike and not choose use custom sounds. So that's something else that could happen as well. So try those things and let us know if it makes a difference. Okay, so question, is there a way to stop Cubase from creating empty folders if I don't save the project? I have a bunch of empty new project, 01, 02, 03, etc. folders. It's really, once it's Cubase is doing what you told it to do. So if you go to new project, you could, if you have in 10.5, this is one of the things that changed in version 11. In 10.5, it just defaulted to being in kind of a generic folder in your documents. But just try to, prompt for project location. But, it's to keep everything straight with all of your audio files, backup projects, your project, your edits folder. You want to have each project in its own folder. And then, if it's something you just want to throw away, that way you just throw one folder away and all the relevant, media and components of that project will automatically get carried over. So, all right. So I know we had some questions that were sent in. Let's get to those before we run out of time. Okay. So we had a question on how to do like polyphonic, what they call polyphonic aftertouch. So let's say if I'm recording here and I just want to take some notes. And let's say these chords, and we wanted these chords to kind of, play until the next chord started. So like to kind of close those gaps. So if we get a length here, the length tab, just try clicking on apply lengths, and that will automatically extend the chords directly over that way. So once again, if you wanted those chords to kind of be held until the next part starts, just click on apply lengths. All right, and we had from I think the last Hangout or two, maybe in both of the last two previous Hangouts, we had a question about the colors within these expression map not carrying over into the expression map editor, and if that was a bug or what the concept was. So I played around with this a bit this week, so it's going to take a quick look. Okay, so let's say if we're on a violin patch here. Sorry about that. Let me just turn that down to kill. Okay, so when we have an expression map, so let's say if I'm here and I go to my note expressions, so we have an expression map, and we'll go ahead and just open the expression map here. So we can see that this is our violins 2, and we have these different colors. So the question was, okay, if I just wanted to see only just the expressions. Right. So I'll just come here. We'll import the key switch. Okay, so now we notice that as we enter in our notes, that we will have, but as we do this, we'll have different, that these colors aren't reflected in the editor here. But how it works is these will be kind of reflected in the actual notes themselves and not necessarily the expression editor. So let's say if we're here, I had all of these particular notes laid out. We could choose to colorize by sound slot. So, and as we do this, and we have different expressions, these different expressions will be different colors. So if I switch this expression to, a different color at that point, we could, I'll just erase one of the expressions here, one of the articulation switches. So you can see that as we put in our different switches here, that the colors change to match what is being generated in the expression map setup. So these colors don't change, but the colors of the notes do. So if I wanted to just select these particular notes for expression map, I could switch and go back, and that way we could get a sense of what the colors are based upon the color of the notes. But we have to change the color options here from like velocity to sound slot to accommodate that. Okay, so we have a question. Good day, Greg. I was just wondering, does Cubase 11 have a frequency splitter plugin? So what a lot of people can do for this is, let's say if I wanted to just jump, let's say to this particular drum loop here. Okay, so let's say, and I wanted to do just like a frequency splitter, so there's a number of multi-band plugins that do this quite easily. So let's say I just want to go to an insert. I'll just go to, let's say, like a multi-band compressor. And then if I just wanted to just solo that one band, and then I could just have so in that way you could just do that. And if you wanted to just process that particular file with just those particular frequencies, we could do just quickly a render in place. So I'll say let's go to our render settings. I'm going to do my channel settings, and now this will just render just the mid-range part of the frequencies. So as we play this back, we could just have those particular frequencies just automatically compensated for. So you could just use squasher, multiband expander, multiband compressor. If you wanted to do, the even quadrifuzz 2, those would all allow you to do that. Okay. So we have a question. I'm trying to align a few audio events, but when I open up the audio alignment menu is grayed out and I can't select it. Any idea what I could be doing wrong? See if I still have, just open up in our project. Okay, so let's say if I'm here and I go to my audio, like our audio alignment is probably grayed out now. So all right, so let's just see. Okay, so what I would do if you want to do alignment type function is, let's say if I wanted to take these vocals, we'll show you how to do it here. All right, so let's say those aren't kind of lining up as we would like. So I'm going to just open the alignment panel here and then just add. So let's say I wanted to select the file and I'll add that as my reference. And I wanted these files to be my targets. And you could add multiple files at once. And then I'll just say align audio. And now so if you don't have any audio selected, and let's say we had the panel closed, that, you know, you may not, you know, depending on the state, or if you have something else selected. So let's say maybe a folder track, or let's say if there's a MIDI track, perhaps, that sometimes you may see certain functions grayed out, but you know, you could always try to do it right from there, Johnny, and see if that works for you. Okay, so we have this, I believe, from Leif. I'm on an SSL matrix control surface and mixer. I'm trying to make a macro that makes channels to record a drum set or button to push to make all audio tracks, route them, and name them. Is this possible in Cubase 11? I cannot figure out how to name them. So I think hang on just 1 second, my son's knocking. All right. Sorry for the interruption. So I know that I think the SSL matrix, if I remember, could add a like a little QWERTY keyboard. So, you know, you could come up with a project logical editor and, you know, add track, and you could come over here and just choose to, you know, say, okay, name, you know, you could say, you know, generate name, you know, kick drum, excuse me, and store that as a preset. That, you know, you could do a really, really convoluted macro that you know, you might spend, you know, 3 days making, and you use it once. You know, what I would consider doing is taking, like, you know, maybe a whole series of channels here and, you know, coming over here and just saving, you know, right click on it and save a track preset. So let's call this, you know, Leif drums. Okay, and this could have all your routing, all the names. Like if it's a studio kit, you know, you could come over here and let's say, now I want it to go to my media. I want it to go to track presets. And go to multi. And then we could just say, okay, I just wanted to grab my Leif drums and just kind of drag it over. And then all the routing and the naming is automatically kind of configured right there. So I don't think there's a way to necessarily do that through your control surface, but I think if by the time you spend a lot of time doing a macro that's very convoluted and one character can kind of mess everything up for you, I would just save a track preset and just drag it into your projects when you want to do that. All right, so I just have a question. Hi. Okay, checking time. We're doing okay. I really appreciate your live streams. I have a problem with the download assistant. I'm on iMac Pro with the T2 security chip. After updating to Catalina OS with Cubase 11, I cannot open download assistant. Have you heard of this problem? Do you know if there will be an update to fix this? So sometimes it could be the latest one. I think you may have to use your My Steinberg credentials. I know when we first did it, there was a lot of, when Cubase 11 came out, it was like the most popular upgrade that we ever had. And, our license servers got hammered, or our downloads got hammered through the download assistant. But you could always go to the main Steinberg site, and there's a dedicated download page on the website that you could use as well, which will give you all the same content, just a different location without having to use the download assistant. Okay, questions from Les in Longmont, Colorado. I'm creating an expression map to use with Hallian Sonic 3 studio strings using Cubase Pro 9.5. I have partially succeeded. I have one instance of Hallian with different articulations loaded on channels 1 through 6. I now have articulation lanes visible in the lower window of the instrument track, which I can use to indicate which MIDI channel articulation to use for each note. The trigger notes are assigned to the lowest octave available below the playable range of the instrument. This setup is successfully switching between articulations, but it's also generating a sub-bass noise from the trigger notes somehow. I've tried changing the low range of the instrument in the expression map setup so it's higher than the trigger notes, and check to make sure the trigger notes haven't been duplicated in the instrument track. Unintended noise is still present. I'm an experienced Cubase user, but completely new to expression maps. Any ideas of what's going on? Thanks in advance for any suggestions. So let's say if I wanted to go to studio strings, and it could be that, even though it's below the range of the instrument, that, that instrument may not be bound by that particular, paradigm. So let's say if I want to go to, let's say, Hallian Sonic, I get to studio strings. All right, so let's say if I wanted to go to Love Song, so I'll just come here. So, that's below the range of the instrument. So let me just get my phone out of the way and go an octave lower. So that's still generating pitch, like, 2 octaves below the lowest octave. So if it sounds something like that, it's still playing that particular sample. So you may be switching, but, those particular notes are still sounding. So what I think you probably need to do is just to go to the MIDI setup in Hallian or Hallian Sonic and just come over here and just set the range here of what notes are playable or are going to actually trigger the sounds. Now when I play that low note, we don't hear anything. But if I take this down, so now I just set the range here, even though it's, it could be beyond the playable range, but now it's not going to send that MIDI message. So I think that, since the studio strings isn't an instrument that's like strictly tied to the instrument range of the samples, that it's going to play back at, notes outside of the playable range and the notes that you're using for the articulation. So I think if you just come here and just go to the MIDI, and you can do this in Hallian Sonic or Hallian, and just change that low note range, that you'll be fine. So give that a try and let us know how it works out, Les. Okay, we had a question. I think this is on the comments field of the last Hangout. Hi, Greg. Thank you for your hard work. Would you please talk about how to record Korg PA3X or any Korg arranger style into Cubase MIDI tracks? So what a lot of people do is, sometimes the MIDI information that triggers the arranger patterns in a lot of arranger keyboards don't actually, the patterns that are being generated, they don't get transmitted out of the MIDI port. So you may play a chord and it's playing back a whole arrangement based on what you're doing. But when you record the MIDI information, all that the instrument, and this could depend upon the instrument, but make sure that the instrument itself is taking all the arrangement or very kind of sophisticated arpeggios and patterns, and it's not just generating that internally, but make sure that the instrument can actually generate that out of the MIDI port. Most of them don't do that because the other instruments aren't set up to work so exclusively with the onboard sounds, and those patterns and arrangements are just kind of set up to really take advantage of the particular sounds and the capabilities of, articulation switching to make it seem seamless. But it's a lot of stuff under the hood that may not translate into if you wanted to capture all of the different patterns. Now, sometimes you could record just the MIDI notes themselves, like you hold a chord, the patterns are being triggered. So the information that you're recording, what I would try to do is on a MIDI port, and they're probably on different MIDI channels. I would come over to add a track. Let's add a MIDI track. And I would, set the input from the Korg, and I would put it into MIDI channel any. And that will record, all 16 MIDI channels onto one particular part. And then if you needed to split those 16 MIDI channels, select the event, go to your MIDI menu, and you'll see dissolve part. And what dissolve part will allow you to do is to separate the different MIDI channels or separate pitches on your on the event, and that should work. But I haven't seen many controller, like workstation keyboards, that actually transmit all of the arpeggios as MIDI data outside of the device. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but most of them don't, aren't. The design intention is to keep you using that particular arranger keyboard and kind of, get you into that particular ecosystem, if you will. All right, so let's go back to our questions. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. And if you've learned something new, make sure you hit the like button and that you subscribe to the channel. And we're just about out of time to see if there's one last quick minute question that we can get in. Okay, so I just see a question. How to export master instrumental and full mix at once, MP3 and WAV file. So if you wanted to take like your whole mix and export it, we could do this with Job Queue. So we would go to export audio mix down. So let's say I want to do my stereo mix and I want this to be a 24-bit 44.1 WAV file. I say add queue. Now I want it to be an MP3 file at 320K. Add to queue. And then start queue download. It'll do your export audio as a WAV file and your export audio mix down here as an MP3 file. So you could do multiple configurations just like that. All right, so with that, we're just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for the great questions. We'll be doing the hangout again or the live stream on Tuesday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern. So check local times with daylight savings time. We hope that everyone has a wonderful weekend and that you stay safe and healthy. And we'll see everyone on Tuesday. And you can send questions to clubcubase@steinberg.de. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend. Take care.